This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Lindsay. I work for Noah Nesdis in the GOES-R program. Welcome to the Satellite Book Club seminar series. This is number 216. Today, we are going to hear about a topic which is near and dear to my heart, which is snow, but specifically the operational forecast perspective of the historic Buffalo, New York blizzard of December 2022. The presenter today is Heather Kenyon, who is a meteorologist at the NWFO Buffalo. And our facilitator today is Adam Gill, who is a meteorologist from the Binghamton WFO. A few reminders to everybody in the audience. This session is being recorded. Please mute your microphone and turn off your webcam. We're going to be doing a Q&A section after the presentation. I'd like to encourage attendees to post their questions in the chat room, and then we'll go through and field them from there. If you're logged on under an alias account, please sign in with your full name or specify the full name when asking a question in the chat. We're always looking for future presenters. If you're interested in presenting really on anything, you can contact the Tower S team if you're interested. The training team can help create training materials that may be unavailable. Contact Ross Van Til for information or questions about that. Big thanks to ACLO, the Geo and Leo programs, and our facilitator today, Adam Gill. So again, the presenter today is Heather Kenyon. Heather is a meteorologist at the NWS Buffalo. She began her career with NWS Washington, Baltimore, Sterling office in 2009. She has 15 years of forecasting experiences and specializes in GIS, aviation weather, satellite weather, and student and employee mentorship. Heather received a BS in meteorology at SUNY Oswego and an MS in Geospatial Information Studies at the University of Maryland. Outside of work, Heather can be found at the ice rink watching her two kids play hockey. Welcome, Heather, to Satellite Book Club. Take it away.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And thanks for having me. It's truly an honor to be on this call. I have many takeaways from many of the presenters on the Satellite Book Club. So thank you. So today I'm going to talk about the historic Buffalo, New York blizzard of December 2022. I first just want to point out that I did have a co-presenter with on this talk, Judy Levange, since retired from the National Weather Service in Buffalo, but she did help come up with this presentation with me. Okay, so first off, I want to talk about this winter storm because it had major impacts across the entire lower 48. As you can see, on December 23rd, 2022, if you were east of the Rockies, you were probably in some type of winter weather hazard or expecting it. But in this talk, we're going to look at what occurred across Western New York that holiday weekend. Okay, so just a little geography lesson for those not familiar with the Eastern Great Lakes region. Outlined in purple is our forecast area. We cover Western New York, and then we go up along the Lake Ontario shoreline into North Central New York. For big lake effect snow events that occur in Buffalo, we like to see a southwest flow event, which really just targets the Buffalo metro. Speaking on climatology, areas south of the city of Buffalo usually receive well over 100 inches of snow per season, whereas the north towns range from anywhere from 50 to about 75 inches per winter season. All right, so let's go into leading up to the event. Okay, so 4 to 5 days out, around December 18th to the 19th, forecasters were starting to see signals that we could see a major, if not significant, winter weather event across the forecast area, especially Western New York. Local research has shown that if we get in a setup with a deep trough over the Great Lakes region into the Ohio Valley, we will see colder air coming over the lake, and oftentimes, that could include lake effect snow. So here in this graphic on the left, you see 500 millibar heights. They are anomalous for this, 3-week period, already 4 to 5 days out. And then on the right, you see 850 geopotential heights already really outside of the climatology for this time of year. So at this point, we mentioned in our hazardous weather outlook that the potential for significant winter storm was possible with significant lake effect snow Thursday through the weekend. And of course, this was coming up on a holiday weekend. So about 3 to 4 days out, we started to message on social media. Here's just 2 examples we have. Of course, we couldn't really pinpoint exactly where the lake effect band would set up, but we kind of give a clue for people, for the public, about, that there is the chance that, significant winter weather will impact the area for the holiday weekend. And we tried to break it down as best we could. At that point in our AFD, 3 days out, a forecaster wrote, "One could certainly describe the storm system as a once in a generational type event." And as anyone could imagine, being a forecaster in a forecast office, this definitely took the media by surprise, and even county officials were starting to use this once in a generational type event wording as they started to advertise this event. 3 days out, we started to issue watches for our area. And as you can see, we had a lot of impacts. It wasn't just lake effect snow and high winds. We were also expecting marine impacts, lakeshore flooding along the Lake Erie and Lake Ontario shoreline. We had storm watches out across the waters. One thing to point out, though, that at this time, we had an ongoing lake effect snow event taking place. So we ran into this problem where, we still want to communicate what's occurring right now, because it was, we were still getting 1 to 2 inch per hour rates east of Lake Ontario, but we also have this huge event coming up on the holiday weekend. So we were a little torn on when to issue these watches ahead of this event, just so people weren't going to ignore what was currently going on. At this point, briefing started for this event. We conducted our first New York State DOT call. We briefed all the counties and western districts, so mainly Western New York, and then our first partner email was sent out. Okay, so now we're 2 days out. So as you can see, this is valid Friday morning and then Friday evening, and the blizzard or the cold front was expected to come through that Friday morning. So yeah, parameters are just off the charts. Nothing we've seen in a long time. So we're still pushing, this once a generational type event, strong winds, destructive winds, and heavy lake effect snow behind the cold front. Okay, so here we go. Warnings 1.5 days out. This is now Thursday, December 22nd. As you can see, like we saw in that first slide, every zone covered in something. Do want to point out that although Buffalo gets the reputation that we get, crazy winter weather and blizzards and lake effect snow, we actually don't issue many blizzard warnings. On average, we issue one every 5 to 10 years. So this is a big deal for us to issue a blizzard warning, especially 1.5 days out. We like to see the whites of its eyes before we issue it, just because of the blizzards we've had in the past. But again, the event that we saw was something that we haven't seen in about 40 years. So anyone under 40 would have no idea what to expect with an event like this. Okay, now the day before onset, at this point, as most operational forecasters know, you're just kind of like trying to just summarize everything you possibly could. But we did notice the word was definitely getting out. County executives were, live, just, speaking on what was going to happen, using our images and our graphics to get the message out. Okay, so the blizzard. So this is Friday morning, December 23rd, 2022, and wanted to start with some satellite imagery. This is the air mass RGB, and you can see that descending stratospheric air moving in well into the Ohio Valley and then wrapping up across the northern mid-Atlantic into the northeast. So one thing to point out is that this is the sounding from Buffalo the evening prior. So before the cold front, weather was fair, a little light rain, but as you can see, temperatures above freezing, no big deal. But do want to point out where the tropopause is around, a little under 200 millibars, but that morning it lowered to about, 350 to 300 millibars. So really cool to notice this. I actually picked this up from a previous Satellite Book Club presentation, just how neat you could see that, comparison with the air mass RGB. Also want to point out this morning we released the balloon at the Buffalo office, but we didn't release another balloon for 3 more days. So the whole weekend through the blizzard and the lake effect snow event, we didn't have a sounding because we couldn't get out of the office. Okay, so here's a look at the surface analysis that morning and that afternoon. So 7 a.m. on the left and 1 p.m. on the right. And what I have outlined is the 32 Fahrenheit isotherm. And you can see that, within 6 hours, it went below freezing across the entire forecast area. And on the right, you can see that perfectly southwest flow along Lake Erie, kind of showing that where that lake band would be located. Okay, so here I want to show how rapid things changed after the Arctic cold front moved through the area. So you can see this is the wind speed and wind gusts at the Buffalo airport. Early in the morning, 7:15 a.m., nothing to really write home about. But as you can see, once that front moved through, we were gusting 60 miles per hour, which continued through the morning. And again, this chart is only showing from 7:15 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. Then you can see what happened with the visibility. We started around 5 miles. Again, there was just light rain. Once the front moved through, we went down less than a half mile. And then by 8:40 a.m., we went under a quarter mile and stayed under a quarter mile for the next 37 hours. Here's a look at what temperatures and wind chills did as well. Again, we were mild, 37 degrees, and that slowly dropped. Again, this is only the course of about 3.5 hours, where we went from wind chills, upper 20s to then near zero by late morning. So here's a look at the Buffalo radar for the morning of the Arctic cold front passage. Really want to point out how quickly the lake band set up in this loop. Oftentimes we'll get an Arctic cold front, but it takes a little time to get the lake band to set up, and especially a significant lake band. But with this, strong area low pressure, there was a lot of moisture. And let me just see if I can play that again. Yeah, a lot of moisture. So there's like more lake enhancement to begin with, and then it was purely lake effect once that pulled away. And then here's just a kind of a fun video of what it looked like at the airport. The airport officially shut down in Buffalo at 1 p.m. that morning, or that afternoon, I guess, on Friday, December 23rd. It didn't reopen until Wednesday, so 5 days later. But yeah, here's a look at what blizzard conditions looked like really outside our window here, but at the Buffalo airport. Okay, so kind of summarize what we were hearing and what occurred on that first day of the event. So again, on Friday, by the evening, there were driving bans across the North towns, which is Erie, Genesee, Niagara, and Orleans counties. Those are all, that includes the city of Buffalo, and then those kind of northeast of the city of Buffalo. There were tens of thousands without power. Erie County 911 Center was stressed, averaging 400 calls per hour. and county town road crews pulled off the road. So this is when we started to hear that emergency vehicles were getting stuck. They couldn't see. There were rollovers. So here are just some snapshots of what the city of Buffalo sent out. Not good to see that where there is just no emergency services available in in a city, let alone their suburbs. Us at the Weather Service, we kind of turned to more safety messages, and we issued this social media post about what to do when stranded. The next day, so we're still in blizzard conditions on Christmas Eve, December 24th. Here's a look at what our office looked like, just outside the front door, those drifts. There's a light post there, and then our front door of the office. That day, blizzard conditions and driving bans continued, as you can imagine. There were hundreds of stranded vehicles, and limited towing of vehicles began. Really, the towing didn't start until Christmas Day. 2/3 of emergency vehicles were stuck in the hardest hit areas. No road crews across the northern sections. Failure of the power grid, and this wasn't just power poles down and wires down. This was like full-on transformers frozen shut, where they couldn't even get those thawed and fixed. So there was just no goal of getting power back anytime soon or until the lake ban moved out of the way. We did hear that there were 3 confirmed deaths of people outside at this point. Here's a look at what the band looked like around 18Z or 1 p.m. on Christmas Eve. You could see it actually was north of the city itself of Buffalo, but still blizzard conditions extended well south of that main axis of the band. I do want to point out that in some of our strongest, most significant lake effect bands off Lake Erie, we see this tight northern gradient of the band where it almost takes on this like warm core process, and the area on that northern end is these strong updrafts, and that's where the highest snowfall rates are. So you can see that kind of in that yellow 35 dBz area. And so we were still getting blowing snow even outside the band at this point. And at the same time, here's a look at the Clean IR channel 13 from GOES. Pulled this up, very interesting. You can see the cooler cloud tops along the band, but there's a lot of discussion about using satellite with the lake effect bands, and here you could see that the cooler cloud tops kind of end right when it hits the land, but you probably still see those updrafts further inland. So yeah, it's interesting to use satellite products because lake effect is such a low level phenomena that a lot of the instruments can't quite sample per se, but some of the stronger lake effect bands, as you can see here, definitely did. Okay, so I want to first give a shout out to Bill Line, who sent me this. This is a post-processed image from NOAA 20. So this is a VIIRS image of the blowing snow RGB. And this is about the same time as the previous image. So early afternoon on Christmas Eve. So this is a time when we have a clear shot of the lake effect band. There's not a lot of high clouds in the way. And you can see the blowing snow from the satellite really, apparent right just south of it. So I think in the future, because we just actually added this to AWIPS, we didn't have this at the time. I think this is going to be a great tool to use for messaging for our partners in Slack or whatnot to give more confidence. Hey, the blowing snow's all the way, showing, satellite showing the blowing snow extent to this county. And then you can also see some horizontal convective rolls in other areas to the west and the southeast of the lake band plume. Okay, moving on to Christmas Day. So this is when the sun came out at the office. The band shifted south, and unfortunately, we started to see the full impact of the storm outside our office. And these are some pictures on the bottom there of just cars, off the road. And you know, although the snow ended at the forecast office in Buffalo and the North Towns, it was still producing 2 to 3 inch per hour rates just south of the city. And this really impacted road crews being able to get out, coming from the South Towns that didn't really get hit. They couldn't really make it to the North Towns because we were still in this scenario where the snow was still falling in, and trucks needed to be, clearing off those roads as well. So there were tens of thousands of people still without power, and the death toll was starting to climb. We heard that there were 12 confirmed deaths ranging from 26 to 93 years old. And then oftentimes we get this this setup where we get heavy freezing spray along the lakeshore, and these houses turn into ice houses. And I don't know, I would think we see these every 1 to 2 years, but that was the case again with this blizzard too, that these houses were just encased with ice from freezing spray off Lake Erie. Okay, so storm summary. Again, there were 37 hours of continuous blizzard conditions at the Buffalo airport, widespread 2 to 3 feet of snow across the metro, with localized amounts over 3 feet. We measured 51.9 inches of snow at the Buffalo airport, and then that set a daily record on that Friday, the first day of the blizzard. This map on the right, though, shows a 5-day event. The blizzard only lasted the weekend, but that lake effect band, both east of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, lasted well into the work week, which wasn't really a work week because most people were off, but yeah, Monday, Tuesday. So the snow didn't really taper off until Tuesday. A peak wind gusts were reached that first day behind the cold front. And as you can see, we were in the low 70s for peak wind gusts around the Buffalo Niagara Falls Airport area. All right, to continue, there were cascading events. With this blizzard, impacts lasted well into the following week. There was a backlog of 911 calls to be checked and answered. And unfortunately, when the 911 calls were checked on, there were more casualties reported in homes for a lot of older people. It was a week where schools were closed already, but businesses remained closed that whole week. Transportation by all means shut down through Wednesday, which was again 4 days after the blizzard ended. And here's just an aerial shot of one of the main roads that has a lot of commerce on it. So you can see the impacts that cars and trucks had. We think about what if this happened at a different time. You always have this attitude living in Buffalo. You can make it to the store, but in this case, people couldn't. So yeah, transportation, the Buffalo airport didn't open until Wednesday. A lot of people that work at the airport come from the city, so their bus routes weren't open. And the New York State Thruway from Pennsylvania through Rochester was closed, and international bridges to and from Canada. And there are thousands of trucks that cross those bridges every day. So that was really a hurt to commerce, and it definitely caused a lag to get groceries back into grocery stores. We did plenty of IDSS throughout this event, 35 partner conference calls over 7 days, 15 email briefing packages, and millions of impressions on Twitter and Facebook, especially on that first day. And we look back on what worked well with social media, and the one video that worked the best was one of the forecasters just went outside and said, like, this is what a blizzard looks like, and that was the post that got the most attention. So it's very interesting to see what works with social media. And here's a look at the observatory where we released the balloon. It's about a mile away from our office. It's not attached Um, the all the doors were shut, but the snow still got in somehow. And then a look at the terminal at the Buffalo Airport. Storm summary regarding the deaths of people in the city of Buffalo. Here's a breakdown. And while I don't want to, end on this note, it's really important to look at what the reasons were, because while 18 people perished from being outside during the blizzard, it wasn't people that the number wasn't all people that were stranded. A lot of people left their homes to check on their neighbors and got disoriented. So with messaging, one thing is that we were pushing travel would be impossible, so much, but it's another thing to say, like, do not go outside. You might not be able to see it all. So definitely hit home in a different way. Just want to give some credits, a lot of photo credits to the media around Buffalo and some forecasters in our office. And I will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather, for joining us and giving the presentation about what that storm was like in your CWA. I know, being in the neighboring CWA, we didn't have nearly as much excitement with that event, as once that cold front came through, we dried out pretty well. But yeah, it looks like we've gotten a few questions come through in chat, so I'll be at least at first. I'll give if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to keep asking away. But I do want to talk about, in a couple weeks, there will be another satellite book club with the MIC from NWS Washington, CWSU, and that'll be Rick Winter, and he'll provide an overview of what they do there. And then if you want to give a talk, you can contact either Kashad Bowman or Emily Maddox for questions, and there is a form that was linked at the beginning. All right, so the first question that we had was from Joseph Paxson. So he wants to know how your office handled staffing during the event. Did you have to have forecasters stay at the office, or did you lose power?
Yeah, so unfortunately we did not lose power, but we had a plan to let administrative people leave early on that Friday, and then people coming in knew that they might have to stay the night. So a lot of people were prepared with overnight things like that. But one of the big takeaways was to develop the severe weather plan, right? Even severe winter weather plan for our office. So moving forward, that was one of the biggest takeaways, I think, was to develop more of a staffing plan that the supervisor or lead forecaster would kind of develop and communicate with the staff, because there were 9 people that were stranded at the office that weekend. 4 of them thought they were going home on Friday, but the rate at what the conditions, deteriorated, just kept people from not being able to see out the front door. So yeah, so moving forward, we are definitely gonna plan ahead.
And then we have another question from Dan Lindsay. Did you have any lightning with that band during the storm?
No, we did not. I think it was just too cold for any grapple in the band. So yeah, it was all just very small snowflakes.
Let's see. It's do you have any, would you change anything? We have a question from Steve Goodman. What more might have been done to, or perhaps language used to mitigate fatalities?
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a question I think we all think about a lot still. I think, being that it was the Christmas holiday, and also a Christmas that was occurring after the pandemic, where we were finally able to group together. I don't know if that all played a role. If it was a week earlier, if that, that total would have been less. There's no way to know. But I think that just, having the confidence, the pattern recognition that the forecasters did, and really highlighting that this is a once in a generational type event, to keep pushing it, I think that at least helped. I think we, saved many lives just with that in itself.
Then we have another one from Mike Mussolini, or I might have butchered that last name, but this was obviously a very unique and high-end event. Was there some kind of product or message or type of service that you wish your office could have used during the event, or did you feel that your office was properly equipped?
That's a good question. I think we were properly equipped. We went live on the Weather Channel. We did what I think what most offices do in high-end weather events. I think one takeaway from our office with messaging is that we can be flexible, right? Like we don't have to follow like this plan that we have with other lake effect events where we wait till a watch to issue a briefing. Like if something large is coming up, to be flexible, even if the confidence is say only 30%, to just start highlighting and getting out ahead of this storm. Coming from our source, I think means a lot to the public and our partners.
Right, and we have another question from Stephen. We're with surface observation gaps that you mentioned. Have you considered a broader deployment of webcams?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if we would be able to do that, but we have a great mesonet here in New York State. So webcams, I believe that we have a lot of webcams. The New York State 501 too has webcams all over the interstates. There's only so much you can see, one in the dark and then also in blizzard conditions. So I don't know if like more webcams would have helped in a way. Maybe for, the confidence, like where the blowing snow extent would be, possibly, but yeah, it's interesting. Of course it would be nice for more, webcams and observations. But yeah, that would be good.
Then let's see. Then we have another one from Dan. But did the longer range guidance, like 10 plus days, correctly predict the signal of the cold air mass that was moving into the region or moving into the area?
I'm not sure about 10 plus days, but I know about 7 days out. The ensemble forecast systems, even the deterministic models were pretty much on board with this trough digging in into the Great Lakes region.
And we also have another question from Travis. What was the maximum hourly snowfall rate that you observed there in Buffalo during the event? Or really anywhere, I guess.
Yeah, I know we were averaging 2 to 3 inches at one point. I don't know if we hit 4. That's a good question. I could get back to you on that. Yeah, but it was, measuring snow and 60, 70 mile per hour winds is a tough challenge. We become pros at it here because we have multiple snowboards around our office and we do have sheltered areas to help us with strong winds. But yeah, it is tough to, even get good snowfall rates in this kind of setup.
And I guess that does lead in, how did you measure that snowfall? Is it just an average of measurements, or is there had to take a specific area that seemed like?
Yeah, thankfully, because with the 9 people that we had at the office, I think there were a few that that was one of their main tasks. But yeah, we have multiple snowboards around the office. There's one that's pretty sheltered. And then we would take an average of measurements in some places.
And how are the lake temperatures during this event? Were they above normal or normal?
Yeah, they were above normal. So we were around 40 degrees for Lake Erie. And normal was 38 degrees, so not much off, but yeah, they were slightly above normal.
And another question from Dan or David here. Having worked several big lake effect events during my time in Buffalo, I know the sharp northern gradient is common in most of the high end events, but I don't think I ever saw one get as far north as this event with a sharp cutoff. Were there any mesoscale indicators that would that occurred during this event?
Yeah, that's a good question, David. So yeah, you're right. We usually see it further south, but yeah, I don't believe so. I think the models actually did a pretty good job showing that northern push, but of course, models tend to have a southern bias on our lake effect event, so it wasn't that quite north. But unlike the bands that I know you're familiar with that lock into place, this one didn't necessarily do that. It was more fluid than other cases.
Then I saw that on one of your last slides, you had a lot of um, briefings you had to do. Did you have a lot of media on top of that, especially after you had some of the more viral social media posts that you're having to do on top of all the messaging with the event?
Yes, yeah, media, national media was calling us definitely after the event occurred. Um, yeah, we were getting a lot of inquiries from our local media and national media pretty much before, during, and after um, the event, especially the national media after, of course, when there's fatalities in many big events, they want to know more information. So we had a high workload, I would say 1 to 2 weeks after the blizzard ended.
And I have a question from a jammer. Great end-to-end coverage of this event. I am not sure if having your upper air sounding data once the storm hit would make any difference, but during those 3 days of not launching balloons, did you consider using alternate upper air data such as uh, cosmic data?
Well, I would have to ask the forecasters about that from like discussing things using any yeah, like new caps or anything like that. I don't think was used, but it would be interesting to kind of go back and see if, new caps, especially when the clouds cleared, that Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, those days, if new caps would have had any more insight. But like you said, uh, I don't know if it would have shown much difference. We were using surrounding obs such as Pittsburgh and Detroit, but being, close, if not in the lake band, it would, probably would have showed a higher inversion. So yeah, it would have been useful.
All right, then I have a question from TJ. We often see this type of thing with the leading edge of the plume of higher theta E lake modified air off Lake Michigan. Good low level FGen indicator and weak stability, which causes the sharpness. So I guess that's kind of referring to previous questions there. Let's see. I think that's looks like all the questions that we've gotten so far. So give it a few more seconds here to see if anyone else has any questions. But otherwise, I think that's all that I have and what's been in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Heather, for a really interesting presentation. I know this was such a major event. I imagine it a lot of interest really everywhere about that. Let's see. So, and also thank you, Adam, for leading the discussion and everyone for attending. As previously mentioned, even though I know we would all much rather spend our Thanksgivings listening to a Satellite Book Club presentation, there will not be a presentation next week, but in 2 weeks, Rick Winther, the meteorologist in charge from Weather Service, CWSU, Washington, will provide an overview of that CWSU. So please join us then. And everyone have a great rest of your day and rest of your week.